afternoon, everyone. My name is Manoj Gulati. So, what is water.org doing in this conference on this topic, where we are coming in and we're talking about, future strategies, we're talking about innovations, we're talking about technology. If we are going to have a technology, an innovative technology, we also need innovative financing to take us through. Just the traditional model that the government will do the job and will find all the solutions and make everybody happy in the next 5 years is absolutely the right direction, but not the right solution at the end of it. It will not happen by itself. And so concepts need to be thought through again. So we know that in India, only 18% of the people have got access to water at their households. Globally also, if you look at it, only 1 out of 9 people have access to safe water. It's the biggest crisis. On one side, we talk about the crisis, the water shortage, the water table going down. But at the end of the day, who's paying for the coping cost? It's the poor. They are the ones who are wasting their days, their lives, going and collecting water 3 to 4 kilometers away, bringing it back and doing it again. Not you and I. We are not in that sample size. We are having the luxury of having water by the tap. 18% of India only has that luxury. Second, they are the ones who are paying through the coping cost because their health is either they will do this and their health is suffering. Even if they're getting the water, it's not the best quality. So how do we solve this that the people can empower themselves and bring change to their lives? And then the last one is very important. A child dies every 90 seconds because of waterborne diseases. This slide will help you understand how big this problem is. You need $114 billion for the next till 2030 to get the SDG goals. What happens currently? We are around $30 to $40 billion are being spent. How is this difference? Can you imagine after we put all the money, all the government spending is only 1/3 the spend. So where's that 2/3 gap going to come from? How is that SDG for the India also? How is it going to be solved? Philanthropy, we talk about more CSR money, all that. It only adds to 2% of the total spending. Again, showing that there is something else needs to be done through the process. So water.org is started our journey in 2000. Initially we were like many NGOs. We were trying to do direct impact. We were trying to make water connection a sanitation tool. But we realized that no amount of charity is going to solve the problem. How can we work through it? Before we go there, I just want to bring to many of the young audience how critical is solving SDG 6, which is the first box in the second row. When SDG 6, clean water and sanitation, has direct impact on SDG 3, good health. SDG 6 has direct impact on quality of education. Kids go to school, they do not have to go and bring water. SDG 6 has direct impact on gender equality. There's a way I went for a conference and they said if men had to go and collect water every day, we would have solved this problem 50 years back. It's the woman who goes and gets the water. SDG 6 is directly related with life, is directly related with climate action. So you can see it is so connected with we have to solve the SDG 6 problem if we want to solve the entire spectrum.
In 2019, Mukut and water.org got together and started to assess what is the possibility of starting a water and sanitation product for Mukut. The interesting thing was, after doing the gap assessment, we found that there is a number of clients of Muthoot wanted a product by which they could solve their water and sanitation program, which would be an income enabling for them, which will allow them to spend more time on the productive work. We also look forward to enabling more asset mobilization happening.
मनोज गुलाटी water.org प्रोग्राम बना था। ये बहुत ही एक इंटरेस्टिंग प्रोग्राम है क्योंकि गवर्नमेंट ने इतना काम किया है लास्ट फ्यू इयर्स में वाटर के ऊपर, सैनिटेशन के ऊपर, टॉयलेट बनाने के ऊपर, बट ये कॉम्प्लीमेंट्री पोजीशन बन जाती है जहाँ पे फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन एंड जोन सी महिलाएं हैं वो खुद का एक आत्मनिर्भर पोजीशन उठाती है। देखिए, एक गवर्नमेंट के बनाने से ही काफी काम नहीं बनेगा। गवर्नमेंट के साथ लोगों को भी उसकी ओनरशिप लेनी पड़ेगी। ओनरशिप के लिए उनको हमेशा रेडी होना चाहिए। ये नहीं कि उनको लोन लेना है, बट ये कि उनके पास लोन की सुविधा है। जब किसी के पास सुविधा होती है तो वो उसको करेक्ट तरीके से अप्लाई करेगा। आज से जमाने जब उनसे 10 करोड़ टॉयलेट बने थे, उससे लोगों को समझ आ गई कि शौचालय को यूज़ करना इम्पोर्टेंट पार्ट है। मैं बहुत खुश हूँ इस बात से कि आज का प्रोजेक्ट में OLM, UNICEF बाकी SLBC सबका इसमें बहुत पार्ट आया है एंड ये प्रोजेक्ट आगे जाके देखेंगे कि इसमें कितना और बढ़ेगा बट अवेयरनेस तो एटलीस्ट आई है डिस्ट्रिक्ट लेवल में कि ये एक इम्पॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट ऑफ लेंडिंग है. थैंक यू.
Hello and welcome to the Life and Leadership Show. I'm Mudit and I'm a mindfulness and CXO leadership coach. I've had the privilege of working with CEOs across the world, and every time I work with them, I've really got insights and gems and pearls of wisdom which I thought we should share with you. And that's really why this show was conceived. So if you're a C-suite executive, a startup CEO, an SME owner, or a working professional, I want you to know that we are all leaders in this journey of life. At work, we lead our colleagues, and at home, we lead our families. You'd be surprised to know how many people you inspire. So if you want to be a role model, I thought, why don't we learn from the best in the world? Let's learn from leaders across all walks of life. Let's learn from corporate leaders. Let's learn from startup leaders. Let's learn from SME owners and more. Learn from sportsmen, learn from spiritual leaders. Let's cover musicians or any art form because there's so much to learn from them. Let's learn how they cope with life. How did they face adversity? Who inspired them? What motivated them? And above all, how did they lead themselves, that self-leadership through life? So look forward to seeing you soon. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, from whichever part of the world that you're tuning in. The show is live on all media channels like YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn. So wherever you're watching, thank you so much for coming here and being with us. It's my real pleasure to have a guest like Mr. Manoj Gulati here with us, who's been doing great work in the social sector. And without much ado, I'd really like to welcome Manoj. Manoj, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Hey, thanks for that. It's been a pleasure and just happy to be with you and on this forum. Have a good chat.
Thank you, Manoj. So, Manoj, just tell us a little bit, about your life, your professional life, personal life. What has been happening over all these years and across continents.
Yeah. Thanks for actually sharing that video of mine. I'm quite, one thing which came to my mind was that my Hindi teachers would be turning in the grave at this time after they heard me. But that was a good experience for me to what I'm doing currently. I covered very well. So the journey, if I go back in, where I come from, what have I been doing, and how it's all came together. I come from a very middle class, I would say, professional background. My father was part of a public sector as an executive over there. My mother was a housewife, and I grew up mostly in, I'm a product of 70s and 80s. That was a very socialistic era and time for India. There was, you get a government office, a house, you get a government car, and you get twice a year you get an LTC, the great phenomena called LTC, to travel with the, just for the sense of going through the country, but not too much money at the end of the day. And at that period of time, I just started to, started to do activities and started to think, what do I need to do next? Many of those questions started to come at that stage of my life. I did my engineering and I did my MBA in '94 from IMT Ghaziabad. And then there was, again, part of that, I think it's part of that socialistic era that, one of the bugs that was in every kid in that era was, hey, can we get to US? And how do we get to the US? And so I think if I was born 3-4 years later, most likely I would have just stayed on. There are few like you who stayed much longer in India before you went out. But certainly I think that was the time that I went out. I then started to early career, worked in procurement, worked in sales, worked in supply chain consulting. And I also added up in 2004 an MBA from the Duke University, from the VUCA School of Business. So that was more of a global learning for myself. And then in 2010, I decided to come back to India, and we can talk about it. And I have, for the last 12 years, been with two nonprofit organizations, two development organizations. The first is with an international NGO called Sight Life, which is the world's largest eye bank, not the investment bank that you're familiar with, more of the eye bank, the corneal blindness bank. And also for the last 6 years with an organization called Water.org, working on creating a financial solution, an alternative solution to the traditional charity model. So that's been my very quick summary of where I've come from and where I am today.
Great, Manoj. It's such an interesting story. And I'm sure a lot of us can relate with it because, we've had similar journeys. But the important thing is, after doing, like you said, every kid wanted to go to the US and do an MBA and, whatever after that, right? You're in the promised land. So what made somebody who's done his MBA from Duke University, suddenly after working for a while, want to relocate and come back to India? What was that thinking and what was going through your mind?
So, it's interesting because when early in my life, I was always looking for doing some kind of charity work, some kind of, involved in the development sector. I remember my first work that I did on the charity side was I was in 3rd or 4th grade. And there was the Andhra Pradesh cyclone had come in, massive cyclone in late 70s. And that I went about collecting newspapers from different houses. And every day I would go after, you know how it is. After school, I would go to different houses. My mom would allow me to do that. I would go to houses. I would collect newspapers, Auntie G paper, these types. And by the end of it, I'd literally a quarter of a room filled with newspapers. But it gave me tremendous sense of experience of, you know, joy that, hey, I've done something meaningful in my life. And this is a very early stage. I then got into more activities. Became, joined the Interact Club at school. I was able to do some community eye services or activities over there. And by the time I came to US, I continued to do this. The whole idea of doing some charity at the side of my whatever professional work I'm doing. So in 2009, the Great Recession came, and I lost my job over there for a short period of time. And sometimes those are great opportunities to reflect yourself as to what do you want to do next. I have got my MBAs, I've done everything. By then I would have started to consider myself as had a successful stint of what I've been doing in consulting. And yet the recession, and I was living in Midwest. And if you know, Midwest is like, it takes a long time for the recession to come, but it doesn't go out so easily too. And during that period of time, it just dawned on me that, hey, if I want to do something meaningful, this is what I want to do. I want to go back to where I really found my satisfaction. So I started to started to look for jobs. I started to look in two sectors, back again in consulting, if I get a good consulting job, or I'm going to go back to India. But I'm not going back to India to making people rich and doing consulting. I'm going to go back with a purpose in my life. And that's when things started to, transform for myself internally. I got the job with Sight Life very quickly after that. And that was to come and manage and start the operations for India. And the very next day, ironically, I got a job with a big consulting company. And I was like, that's the classic dilemma you always find yourself in. You have options and you have opportunities, and what do you want to take at that time? And so I had to really get down to deep soul searching again. I came back into saying, you know what, I'm going to try this out because I've always asked for it. And if I don't try it now, then I'd rather not ever ask for it again. And so I came down. My wife also interestingly got a new job, but she was very supportive at that moment. And we both said, let's go for 3-4 years. Let's get the grassroots level experience of what development is about. And that's how I got into this side of the journey. I hope that was some story for you. Yeah.
No, absolutely. It's incredible, and I can quite understand because when I look back, even in my own life, it's only when you're faced with adversity and you're made to sort of really look deep down within, as to what you truly want to do. And I think that's when it comes through. So it's really amazing, for, like you said, you left for the middle class dream and then, you came back to a larger calling, which is really amazing. And I'm sure not too many people in your batch in school or wherever would have wanted to take that choice, but it was really brave of you to do that. And
it was, Mother, there was, family was, I lost my dad in that same period of time. So things, there's a compounding factor that happens in your life.
Yeah.
And if you can come through that compounding factor whenever it happens, then you usually come out in the brighter side of the curve. And because you've seen all the different issues. And for me, going back to go to development sector, to be back with the family, to try to solve, just family issues, were all just compounding together to me. And I could just see myself having a better position there than to join another consulting company and then get into the rat race. I said, this is the time for breakaways. And I did that.
Oh, amazing. I can understand the kind of courage that it would have taken against all so-called social norms, where people tend to follow money and fame and power. You chose to do something which is much larger, for a larger social cause. So really hats off. And I really appreciate that. And now that you've, spent quite a few years going back, I think you spent almost more than a decade or, more doing this kind of work. What have been your learnings or reflections as to, what have you achieved and, what what have you managed to accomplish both on a personal side and a professional side?
Let's talk about on the professional side. Personal side, I would say that's just becoming true to myself. I think that's my biggest success today. I feel more satisfied. I feel we gained what I had to do. I still think that, and yet I've not compromised with what I can give to my children. I've not taken decisions which have been good for me but not good for the family. That's what gives me personal satisfaction. On the professional side, I think the biggest success that comes is that I see myself as somebody who likes to stir the pot. Am I having an echo coming back, or is that okay? Okay, perfect. So, for me, thanks to the early learning, professional learnings that are there, the idea of being a change maker, to be working with bringing in a consulting change in the organization, seeing what needs to be brought in, and then applying the same knowledge and understanding in the social sector has been the biggest professional satisfaction. So, establishing, for instance, a cornea distribution system for India. So obviously that's something which is, I leaned on my supply chain background and I've said, here's something that we can do. Look, let's set up a system by which corneas can be distributed across the country at any given time, saving and impacting the lives right there when otherwise a tissue might go waste. Or, for instance, working on the financial aspects of, going deep dive into seeing, can impact bonds be created? Can the financial institutions and banks actually consider this as a profitable water and sanitation as a profitable product, and showing it to them that this is definitely a scalable product category for you. So, those are the scale and the change. I think those are what I've really enjoyed most.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I think for a minute it went off. So what I'd really like to ask you, when you talk about scale and showing banks how this can be an opportunity, can you tell the viewers a little bit about what kind of scale? Because I'm sure most of them would not be aware of what is possible in this sector. So when I can give you a broader experience of what is scale, and I can go more specific. So let me give you a couple of very quick specific examples of scale. So scale is, for me, is something which is, what we did at water.org. We have been able to get us to a place that today there's over $1.1 billion of lending for water and sanitation has happened in India and in Bangladesh. In India, around $800 million of lending. We're going to touch $1 billion by next year, definitely. What it means is that today around 1.4 crore people have not depended on the government, but actually found a solution for themselves as a financial product. Around 3.6 million loans have happened in this journey. And that to me is a scale of solution that you can do if you the same logic that you use in scaling your operations in a profit corporate sector, if you just use that and pivot that into the nonprofit sector and see the size and scale of change that we can bring in as professionals, it's just unbelievable what can be done. When I joined Sight Life, it was very funny because I went for that interview, and with the people who were interviewing me, the general sense was they asked me, what do you think you can bring in India, a country like India, which didn't believe in corneal blindness and donating eyes and tissues at the time of death. It's a very personal field at that stage, and converting people to do it. And there were not more than in the whole country, not more than 7,000-8,000 tissues being donated, versus the demand was 4-5 times that at least. And I said, guys, it's not an awareness problem. It's a supply chain problem.
again, using the scale issue of what we know of and saying, use efficiencies to bring scale, and don't try to just create a big picture out of nothing, because if you're only going to go and building awareness, you still will not get efficient issues. And that's where we started to start seeing the results coming into it. And to me, those are satisfactions that I can say, yes, the change came in the country. Today, there is, I would say we have not reached what we have, the North Star of, what should be needed for the country, but at least we are halfway there. And that's huge change that has come through. So scale is possible. I mean, bring it back to what you asked. Scale is absolutely possible. Huge scale is possible. You just have to be patient, and you just have to see that you don't fall into the trap of what everybody is using, just the regular development yardsticks, but using more professional ideas of how do I bring these change.
Okay, amazing. I mean, you talked about loans, right? That people can take. So who organizes? How does this whole loan system work? Are there banks doing it, or?
So the journey for water.orgs and lending very much before me. So I'm just one of the pivoting the scale of the operations, and that's my contribution. But the concept predominantly starts from the fact that no amount of, and we talked about in the video, said that no amount of charity can solve the problem. I mean, it's a bottom line problem. But financial capital is available in much abundance if you correctly pivot it. If you can bring in the capital and show to people that you, by taking a small loan, you're actually solving your own problems rather than waiting for the government to come and solve your problems, it just changes. It's like click. They suddenly get it. The women get it that I am spending all my life and energy and my children's life in just getting water and going out for defecation, and the worst things for my health and for my family safety. And so they start take a micro loan. And so initially we started with small NBFCs and MFIs who actually were the best reach at the base of the economic pyramid. But as we went through this journey, by the time I joined in by 2015-16, the priority sector lending, we worked with the RPI and got it approved as part of priority sector lending, which I'm sure you understand became a big game changer for us. Because now we could actually go to a bank and say, hey, as part of your commitments, you can actually, why aren't you looking at this as a product category? And we started to look at the financial institutions, banks, and started to ask them that, what is the operational challenges and financial risks that you see it? And can we help you mitigate those? Can we provide you with the technical assistance that can make this into a viable product? And bankers think from that perspective.
Okay, great. And on the Cornea side, on the site that you were talking about in the video that I saw, right? You enabled a whole scale of movement, the whole Cornea movement you were talking about. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So, Cornea is in both water and Cornea, they're very interesting in some ways because they're all both very measurable development sector. Coming from the corporate side, anything which is KPI related, which can be measured, is something I want to be into. I can relate to it because at the end of the year, I want to say I did X factor of change I brought in. Cornea is another product like that. It's just a thin lens over your eye. It can be removed through a microsurgery. It can be given transplanted to another person, and the person's rest of the eye machinery is all good. So the person not only gets eyesight, but can really convert into a productive person in this society. When we started this, there were multiple problems. I mean, there are problems such as the people who typically work in eye banks were, just because the cornea is donated, they were not putting the standards, the optimal medical standards to collect and treat and check and assess the quality of the tissue. And I don't think anybody wants substandard tissues to be coming in. So what we did was, one, we brought in global standards for eye banking into the country. And we got it approved by the government, and we set up a whole program around it, and we got that to be moving ahead. And I think that today I can proudly say that India's iBanking standards can match the global standards. What we brought in was also the idea that, and again, you've heard about the FedEx hub and spoke model, right? And the whole hub and spoke model is nothing but a distribution system at the end of it. So why can't we just use that knowledge and create the best hub and spoke model for corneas? Why can't we get airlines to do free transportation of those corneas from one point to another? And that way we were able to solve a complete supply chain issue to it. And last, in Lucknow, for instance, we went to a place, King George Hospital, Medical College. And we set up, which is a government medical college. And they had, like most government facilities, it was there as something, as a room, but nothing more than that to do anything. And so we said, hey, we are going to use what you would have again seen a lot of the IT companies use, the BOT, build, operate, transfer of approach. I said, we'll do a BOT with you guys. And they were like totally surprised. And we said, we'll build the iBank for you. We'll operate it for next 8 years for you. And we'll transfer it back to the government at the end of it so that you've got a scalable operation running for you. And I think these are the kind of solutions that really are game changers in the, the way you think and the way you approach a development problem.
Okay, that's quite amazing. So if somebody was to donate their eyes today, what does one do?
First of all, hope that your eyes are eligible. Just because you want to donate doesn't mean that your eyes will be received and transplanted to the recipient. But if you had to do it, I would, rather than have a number, at least in your city, have this understanding that, hey, and tell your family, your loved ones, because nobody knows you better than that, right? Tell them that, hey, when I die, please take the time to call this number up, let them have it. And hopefully somebody in your family, in my family, will know at the right time that, hey, this is one of the wishes, let's try to get that done. That's it. You don't need to sign documents, you don't need to do anything, you just need to be aware that I need to call this number. Or your family needs to be aware.
So it's a particular, there's a, are these numbers commonly available?
Yeah. Each city has their own number, and each city has, most of the large iBanks, I know, like in Bangalore has its own iBank, Delhi has 3 iBanks. So there are iBanks available.
Tell me now, if you were to, you're in the helm of these affairs, what advice would you give to a youngster who may be thinking of, joining the social sector? What would you tell them? What are the things to look for, what to expect, and why should they join, and why they shouldn't join?
Why they shouldn't join? Because the money is not there. That's as simple as that. Be frank to yourself, understand that this is, but I have to step back for a second and, why they should join. And I get this question many times, parents calling up, family members calling up, hey, I want to do something meaningful. I'm like, what is meaningful, guys? I mean, I want to be in the development sector. First of all, find what is your passion. It's the first, I often call it the first P. It's know your passion. Just because you want to do something meaningful doesn't mean that you have passion for everything across the development sector. I connect well with some as a financial product. You may be connecting it well with some human rights issues. And the third person may be connecting very well with child or with education or with health issues. And so really come down to what you want to do, because this is the driver for the development sector is passion. Second, be specific to, just because it's development sector, it doesn't mean that people are, in wearing kurtas and cholas next to themselves. Those days are fast moved out. And so today, the development sector is filled with professionals, some amazing talent and people that come there. I myself was very fortunate, to get many people from IITs and IIMs and ISBs and, the good schools who said, we want to make a change and we've done what we had to do. And these are people at 30, 35 that they had started to talk about it. And so what we have to look at it is ask yourself, what's your passion? Where will you want to contribute? And what price are you willing to come in? Because when I came in at 40, I was right at that cusp where I could actually take a call, and because the money was good, but it wasn't that it could drag me into the, at 40, you're just making good money. Started to make good money. I got out of it that moment. And I think that's what everybody needs to start asking. Do I want to go in that money race, or is this enough for me to sustain myself? And I think that's what the key question is. There was a very interesting, Mudit, a very interesting book I read when I was coming to India at 2010. It was called Uncharitable, a book by a Harvard professor, Dan Pollock or something like that. And I just remember it. So Dan talks about it, that our best talent actually moves to the private sector. And then the people who have not done well, the losers, if I may so, use that and incorrectly use that, to be precise, they end up going into sectors such as development. But what if we can give them enough financial security that the best people want to start moving into this sector, even if it's a little compromise, but it's still worth their time. And I think Uncharitable is a game-changing book by itself, because it changes the way all of us want to be in this sector. Most of the people end up saying, look for jobs that are actually have this opportunity, because there are many organizations that will pay you a decent check and will make you do a very interesting job.
So what I heard was, right, and find a way to connect in whatever field, whatever resonates with you, right? And that it's not just a place for people who haven't made it, but it does attract bright people also. And so what would your advice be? Should they join, at the beginning of their careers, or should they work for a while in a multinational or any other place, so that they build a certain amount of experience which they can then translate to the social sector? What would your advice be?
There's no bad time to join the development sector, to be honest. And it's always a good time to join it. It's your choice of where you want, where your priorities lie at the end of the day, what you think is. Unfortunately, many people and I think the country is changing too. Many traditionally get huddled into this rat race. And if you are able to bring yourself to at least assess that, do I want to be in the rat race, or do I want to take a different view to it? It's great. I do think that between the 30s and early 40s is a very interesting time to come in. You've built in at least 10 years of experience for most people. You've got an assessment of what the market is about. You can bring in and contribute into it. Today, if you're a finance person, there's huge demand for finance people to come into it. If you're marketing, you can bring in digital marketing into this space. You can bring efficiencies. If you're looking at HR, then you can bring in your HR expertise into this space. So all the talent that you have, you can apply it just like any other sector. And so I would say, hey, if this is in your big picture, then why wait for 30 years to bring that, to go to the big picture? Do it now. It's not a bad deal at the end of the day.
Okay. So you feel that there's an opportunity to bring in, various aspects, right? Whether it's technology or marketing or anything, or finance or anything, any skill that okay, great. So I think that's something that I think a lot of people may not be aware of, and I'm so glad that you brought this to our notice. But tell me, what are the other sort of qualities that you need to sort of sustain yourself in this journey? There are certain skill sets that are very essential. So what is it mentally and, technically that you need to have to sustain and have a career in the social sectors?
Again, Madhur, I don't think the social sector is any different beast than the corporate sector. It may be less vicious, if I can use that word, but at the end of the day, you have to deliver the same, for what you're set up for. And if you want to see this as a meaningful purpose, life as a way to corporate life, it's a corporate by itself in a way you could call it. You have to bring in depth. You got to go deep into the subject. You cannot have, like any other, professional who's building their career. You can't be at the surface and expect that you will grow in the sector. You have to have passion and passion is definitely one ingredient which is you need in multitude, because you are trading off things. You need to have a certain amount of, build the network, build the allies, have that sense of, connectivity with other people, and a sense of purpose at the end of the day that you're doing. I mean, there has to be strong conviction in yourself.
What I heard was, I think, of course, some constant themes like purpose and passion that has to sustain it. And it's very much like you're saying, like any corporate career, a lot less vicious, or that's a term that you use in terms of being. But is it that organized now? I mean, is it as organized as, for a lot of us who don't know, right? Earlier on, it was more things that one did. But are these very organized sectors also now?
Yes and no. And if you are a game changer, that's the opportunity. That's it. I mean, you have to have patience. You have to recognize that, you will have, I mean, you're using the same platforms today. Today, I'm working in, one of the projects I'm working on is an global e-learning platform. So it is cutting edge. I mean, I'm using the same, AWS platforms. I'm going to use the same, sense of which technology I'm going to apply, how I'm going to scale this operation up. I have the same project management challenges that I have to sit with. Project management is a huge space for the development sector. But you have to have patience, and you have to have the sense of objectivity that, hey, I know I am contributing in making this change over here.
Great. So I think what's come through is real, one is project management, your ability, and the other is what I heard was, you have patience, right? So you are making this, and it is going to take time and overall. So with these skills, and it's interesting you say that you're using the same kind of technology, right, in terms of learning platforms, etc., which is there, which is really great news from for a lot of people, I'm sure. Like I wasn't aware of the kind of changes. I mean, personally, I must confess that this is the kind of stuff that that an organization like yours is helping others to kind of learn also. That's fantastic, and I think it's great progress there. Just something on your personal side, right? I mean, so one is you mentioned that you had purpose and you had, so how would you look at your life in terms of, every career has, some challenges. So how would you have dealt with those, apparent short-term failures or long-term that you might think, and how did you recover and get on with your career?
Yeah, great question. So, Mudit, I have to, can you hear me? Yeah. So I have to tell you, I am the poster child of high school failure. I consider that I'm the classic poster child of, kids who didn't do as well as they could have done to their potential at school, but had the given the right opportunity, given the right support, were able to transform themselves and work around it. I think high school for me meant a lot of fun. It also meant that I was perhaps, there was some level of, there's anxiety. School is a tough place. It can be, and you have to build yourself around it. And I have to say, I was a good student, but never on the exceptional side. And at one stage, I think by the time I came to my 12th, I bombed my 12th in my own feeling, in my own assessment. I came below par. But then that's when that's the first opportunity that I had. That was the first realization point that the bubble had burst in my mind. The fun bubble had gone. The things had really started to strike in my head. And I have to say, my dad was very supportive of it at that time. So he was not judgmental. He was not trying to, be criticized or make a critic on, case of what I am or who I can be. He just was supportive, unconditional supportive. And I think that's, for this audience, I would say that's the best thing we can give to the kids, that unconditional thing, because we don't know when the next, which lever is going to move at the right place, right? And that's the thoughtfulness we need to have in our mind, that you don't know what you're doing. And obviously, he knew better than what I was thinking at that moment, right? So he had the confidence that stayed on with me. And so even when, from school, and then 20 years later, or 20, when I had my, 2009 situation, it didn't bother me. It was like, I know what I am. I know I can do it. I just have to, recalibrate myself to the next level of what I want to do. And I think those are great skills that came in at that stage. That's what got me to start building into it. I think that's one of the examples I wanted to share in this time.
So thanks, Manoj, because this is really, you've shared something very personal, and it takes a lot of courage to do that. And I'm sure, and I hope it inspires other people that, it's right from school. And I think what you mentioned was that it was good, unconditional support from your father that helped you. And later on in life, when situations came, you were able to deal with it much better. So
really, underneath this quote, it's all the same at the end of the
day. Yes, that's true. That's very nice. But that ability, that what you mentioned was when somebody supports. I think so. There's a message for a lot of our viewers also to support, our kids and our societies around when times are tough. Because when you offer that, then people get a lot of confidence to rise up and shine, right? And you're a great example of that. But the way I look at it also is that life is so, it's really a marathon, right? And different people bloom at different times. So everything is an opportunity to learn.
I want to, Mother, just, as you talked about, it came to my mind. One, it's interesting. I'm not a rote learner by nature. This is when you start self-reflecting, you start figuring it out that I'm not a rote learner. So I will never be able to get the, there's that skill. So I'm a deep learner. It takes me time, but once I get it, I get it. And I think today it's become an advantage for me rather than the rote learnings. I have better assessment of what things can be done. I go deeper into those problems. I solve those problems in a deeper way. But at that moment, it didn't seem the best thing that I was having, because I was just, going too far into many things that I was trying to be curious. And the other thing which came out was I was not doing, I may have been having a harder time academically, but I was using my time in Interact Club. I was building those skills over there. Those skills then are also adding up today, and they're giving me dividends today. So we don't know which skills your kids are adding at what time. And that's the interesting side to it.
Yeah. An interesting point that you brought up in terms of, various skills that one builds along the way, right? And along the journey. And I think what you've also brought out is that it's important to expose yourself to various opportunities. Like you talked about the Interact Club, which gave you a chance to do things. And I think that's all helped you. And I think the other interesting thing you brought out is really the question of, I think it will come as a relief to a lot of Indian kids, is that you don't have to be good at rote learning. So I think that's very interesting, because in the long run, your ability, like you said, you're a deep learner, and you get deep. Once you get it, and then you really go deep into things. And I think that's the kind of impact that you're making, in your own area and in your own field, really tremendous, which is there, So tell us, just allied with this question is, what are your stakeholders, and, what do you do? What do you have to do to manage all of them?
Internal, external. I mean, just like I've been saying, life is, you manage all your stakeholders. Your family is a stakeholder in a way, if you want to call it, but that sounds too brutal actually. But they are first stakeholders in life, right? You take care of them. You then, if you look at it from an internal, from work point of view, your internal stakeholders, I am not, there are people who believe heavy on the relationship management takes you places. I believe relationship management helps you just, you can connect with people, but at the end of it, they will look at your depth of what you can bring to the table, what value you bring to the table. And the next, whatever role you're going to take, the next, step you're going to take is based on your network will get you there, but relationship management needs to be having a purpose to it. And it needs to have that, this is what I can help you on, or this is what we bring together. What's the commonality for you? With a purpose, when you bring relationships, I think it's very powerful.
So great. I heard bringing purpose in relationships, not just relationships alone. That, but at the level at which you are, where you are a regional director, and I'm sure there are people who are investing and people who are, in behind those programs, etc. Maybe you can give viewers a little sight of how you have to manage maybe the board, the people, the various other government and other institutions that might be there who may be interested in.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the, like, let's say, for instance, the government. The government has its own, and in most cases across the globe, whatever I've seen, traditionally the government has their agenda. And one cannot work, you can't cross that agenda. You have to work around that agenda. You have to identify and then bring the change within that agenda. And you've got to look at relationships in that 2 years down the road versus what's happening right there. I've had many missteps where a person changed and somebody came and I had no connect with that person. And if I had only just anticipated and planned it that, hey, these could be the people. What's the second layer of, sometimes you make a relationship, just me and you forget that ecosystem, that relationship could change any day, any minute. This is over. From a professional point of view, you could move out, I could move out, somebody else could come in, all that can happen. So you've got to build an ecosystem in your relationships so that somebody can take you further, when things change. Somebody can stand ally for you. And that, I think, is becoming more and more the word that I like to use, that who's your ally at the government? Who's your ally at the board? Who understands that the work you're doing has impact? And if you build those, and these are not, and I'm not talking superficial allies. I'm not talking people who don't, build network because, they will promote you because they love you. No, that doesn't happen. Because you buy them drinks, that doesn't happen. You've got to have allies who actually understand your business case. They understand where you're coming from and your integrity, your purpose, your sense of vision. They understand. When they understand it, then they become your true allies. And that's what I constantly, internal, external, I'm only looking at, hey, who's my next set of allies? Made sense?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, in terms of, I think you brought in a good concept to bring in an ally, right? Somebody who's aligned with you, somebody who built and, the limited time period of a particular relationship that might happen. So I think that's a good thing for a lot of us to wait.
Just to add, it shifts the focus from frivolous to meaningful. And that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, great.
People say you can get a next promotion because you have contacts, and you can move to the next job because you have contacts. And I would say, I don't think so. It happens, and it happens. Of course, this is the real world. There is every kind of nepotism. There's every kind of stories that can be there. But at the end of the day, everyone has to deliver to what it is.
Great. One other thing, I mean, because it's such an interesting sector, I just felt that, we hear a lot of talk, right? But I don't think people are aware of the challenges of water as such. And it's very often said that the wars of the next century are going to be fought on water because of perhaps the scarcity and, the use of it. Would you like to tell the viewers a little bit about your view as to how serious is the condition and what we can do to preserve water?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for giving me this opportunity to talk about water. I mean, this is, you're asking my favorite topic and say, come on, let's talk about it. So fantastic. Thank you. You know, there's another quote which more than the next wars, I hope that this is more, seems more like the Jaws story to me. It says that if climate is a shark, then water is the teeth of the shark. It's as powerful as that. I mean, if you don't, water has to be, if you want to solve the climate issues, you have to solve water issues first. Water, as we know, is the level of water is going down in the next 5 years. Today's paper had it, Delhi is going 661 kpm. So effectively, water level is below par. There's already shortage in Delhi. Last year, there was shortage in Chennai. And the issue of water continues to be there. But there's two parts to this story. One is the water level going down, and then the access to water. And so when water level goes down, it doesn't really go down as fast for us. It goes down faster for the people who are living at the, the poor people living at the base. And for them, the access to water gets denied. And I have to, I appeal to most of the financial institutions, the NBFCs, and I say, today, if you don't look at water as a solution, the same clients of yours will migrate and they will not be your clients anymore. They will go to another city, they will find somebody else will take, they'll take a loan from somebody else, they'll start their livelihood somewhere else. And if you want to preserve your business, you better look at climate as an issue. You better help me solve this problem. And if you are able to solve this issue, you're going to have healthier, more productive families. They're going to pay your loans. They're going to solve your problem. They're going to make your network much better. Whereas if I look at it as, as a larger problem, we've got to learn the understanding of water conservation in a huge way. 85% of the fresh water in India is used for agricultural purposes. Only 5% is used at the household level. If we do not get into better irrigation techniques, if we don't solve this from water perspective, I think we're going to run out of that 85% very soon. Now, the global average agricultural water is around 65%. So we are 20% inefficient right there. I'm not doing 20% of the millions of gallons of water that we are using. It is huge. And the same is water today is becoming a major issue if you want to have net zero impact to your businesses. If you're not going to, look at the, just one jeans and one t-shirt takes 2,100 liters of water. So literally, every time we export, to one of our jeans or denim, we are exporting to US. We are not exporting the cotton, we're exporting water. And so if we don't conserve that water, at the end of the day, our resources are getting depleted. They're getting it at $2 a meter, but at the end of it, we spend 2,100 liters. So it's huge, something that everyone to be aware of. I'm going to, give one more example, and I have this fantastic young teenager who actually at the age of 15 started a program. Her name is Garvita, and she started a program called Half Glass Full. And all she did was a simple thing. And she went to every restaurant and said, hey, can you pour half a glass instead of a full glass? And that itself is around 20 million liters of water saved for the country every year. Just pour yourself just half a glass. So there's opportunity in water at many levels. All we need to be aware is it's not your right, it's a resource. And I love to end up by saying, treat it like a resource, just like you use your gas and you use your other consumable items, treat water in the same perspective. I thank you again for this. This is fantastic for me to talk about.
Thank you very much, Manoj. And I think we've reached the top of the hour. What a lovely way to end with such a profound thought. Maybe if all of us could just use a little less water, not just for drinking, but for conserving it. I think it's a great concept in terms of use it for the right and don't waste it. And I think another thing that I've really learned from you today is that when you export jeans, it's not just denim, but it's water because of the consumption. That's so I think this needs to be communicated. I think there is a great communication challenge here to bring that awareness, and I'm sure you're going to be doing a great job. And if there's any last words you'd like to share with our audience before we wind up.
No, I guess my best I would say is that, hey guys, there's opportunity sitting here too. It's not that bad. You may not make, your emotional quotient will be much higher, and the money is okay. Don't worry about that. There's enough opportunities available. We'll just have to look at it at the right time, and you'll enjoy this at the ride over here.
Thank you. Very wise words. And I hope they sink into I think the newer generation is a lot more conscious about these things because they haven't come from scarcity like how we grew up in our, growing up years. But thank you very much, Manoj, for your time. And I just hope that, this message is carried across the world as to how conscious we need to be about water and, of course, sight. So thank you.
Thank you again. Thanks so much, Mother. Take care.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.